could be knocking on my door so late? I'm coming, hold on. So impatient. Hello? Oh, hi. What are you doing here? Why are you still awake? You want to sleep here? You're a big girl. You can sleep alone in your dorm. The storm? I think it's quite relaxing, to be honest. You're afraid? You know, I've seen you do some remarkable and utterly dangerous things with others, yet a little rain is what gets you shaken up. Fine. Okay, come in, I guess. I'm only letting you because Sebastian's off with Anne. No other reason. I'm warning you now, we're not going off on some adventure. I really do just want to sleep. Wow, you really are afraid, aren't you? I've never seen you so jumpy. Lay down in my bed. Is there anything that can comfort you? Bedtime stories? What are you, 6? I'm pulling your leg, don't worry. I have a book around here somewhere full of stories I could read you. Just need to find it. Here, it was hidden under the pillow. Here's one you'd like. Babbity Rabbity and her cackling stump. A long time ago, in a far-off land, there lived a foolish king who decided that he alone should have the power of magic. He therefore commanded the head of his army to form a brigade of witch hunters and issued them with a pack of ferocious black hounds. At the same time, the king caused proclamations to be read in every village and town across the land. Wanted by the king, an instructor in magic. No true witch or wizard dared volunteer for the post, for they were all in hiding from the brigade of witch hunters. However, a cunning charlatan with no magical power saw a chance of enriching himself and arrived at the palace claiming to be a wizard of enormous skill. The charlatan performed a few simple tricks, which convinced the foolish king of his magical powers, and was immediately appointed Grand Sorcerer-in-Chief, the king's private magic master. The charlatan bade the king give him a large sack of gold, so that he might purchase wands and other magical necessities. He also requested several large rubies to be used in the casting of curative charms, and a silver chalice or two for the storing and maturing of potions. All these things the foolish king supplied. The charlatan stowed the treasure safely in his own house and returned to the palace grounds. He did not know that he was being watched by an old woman who lived in a hovel on the edge of the grounds. Her name was Babbity, and she was the washerwoman who kept the palace linens soft, fragrant, and white. Peeping from behind her drying sheets, Babbity saw the charlatan snap 2 twigs from one of the king's trees and disappear into the palace. The charlatan gave one of the twigs to the king and assured him that it was a wand of tremendous power. "It will only work, however," said the charlatan, "when you are worthy of it." Every morning, the charlatan and the foolish king walked out into the palace grounds, where they waved their wands and shouted nonsense at the sky. The charlatan was careful to perform more tricks, so that the king remained convinced of his grand sorcerer's skill, and of the power of the wands that had cost so much gold. One morning, as the charlatan and the foolish king were twirling their twigs and hopping in circles and chanting meaningless rhymes, a loud cackling reached the king's ears. Babbity the washerwoman was watching the king and the charlatan from the window of her tiny cottage, and was laughing so hard she soon sank out of sight, too weak to stand. I must look most undignified to make the old washerwoman laugh so, said the king. He ceased his hopping and twig twirling and frowned. I grow weary of practice. When shall I be ready to perform real spells in front of my subjects, sorcerer? The charlatan tried to soothe his pupil, assuring him that he would soon be capable of astonishing feats of magic. But Babbity's cackling had stung the foolish king more than the charlatan knew. Tomorrow, said the king, we shall invite our court to watch their king perform magic. The charlatan saw that the time had come to take his treasure and flee. Alas, your majesty, it is impossible. I had forgotten to tell your majesty that I must set out on a long journey tomorrow. If you leave this palace without my permission, sorcerer, my brigade of witch hunters will hunt you down with their hounds. Tomorrow morning you will assist me to perform magic for the benefit of my lords and ladies. And if anybody laughs at me, I shall have you beheaded. The king stormed back to the palace, leaving the charlatan alone and afraid. Not all his cunning could save him now, for he could not run away, nor could he help the king with magic that neither of them knew. Seeking a vent for his fear and his anger, the charlatan approached the window of Babbity the washerwoman. Peering inside, he saw the little old lady sitting at her table polishing a wand. In a corner, behind her, the king's sheets were washing themselves in a wooden tub. The charlatan understood at once that Babbity was a true witch, and that she who had given him his awful problem could also solve it. "Crone!" roared the charlatan. "Your cackling has cost me dear. If you fail to help me, I shall denounce you as a witch, and it will be you who is torn apart by the king's hounds." Old Babbity smiled at the charlatan and assured him that she would do everything in her power to help. The charlatan instructed her to conceal herself inside a bush while the king gave his magical display, and to perform the king's spells for him without his knowledge. Babbity agreed to the plan, but asked one question. "What, sir, if the king attempts a spell Babbity cannot perform?" The charlatan scoffed. "Your magic is more than equal to that fool's imagination," he assured her, and he retired to the castle, well pleased with his own cleverness. The following morning, all the lords and ladies of the kingdom assembled in the palace grounds. The king climbed onto a stage in front of them, with the charlatan by his side. "I shall firstly make this lady's hat disappear," cried the king, pointing his twig at a noble woman. From inside a bush nearby, Babbity pointed her wand at the hat and caused it to vanish. Great was the astonishment and admiration of the crowd, and loud their applause for the jubilant king. "Next, I shall make that horse fly," cried the king, pointing his twig at his own steed. From inside the bush, Babbity pointed her wand at the horse, and it rose high into the air. The crowd was still more thrilled and amazed, and they roared their appreciation of their magical king. "And now," said the king, looking all around for an idea, and the captain of his brigade of witch hunters ran forwards. "Your Majesty," said the captain, "this very morning, Saber died of eating a poisonous toadstool. Bring him back to life, Your Majesty, with your wand." And the captain heaved onto the stage the lifeless body of the largest of the witch-hunting hounds. The foolish king brandished his twig and pointed it at the dead dog. But inside the bush, Babbity smiled, and did not trouble to lift her wand, for no magic can raise the dead. When the dog did not stir, the crowd began first to whisper and then to laugh. They suspected that the king's first 2 feats had been mere tricks after all. "Why doesn't it work?" the king screamed at the charlatan, who bethought himself of the only ruse left to him. "There, your majesty, there!" he shouted, pointing at the bush where Babbity sat concealed. "I see her plain, a wicked witch who is blocking your magic with her own evil spells. Seize her, somebody! Seize her!" Babbity fled from the bush, and the brigade of witch hunters set off in pursuit, unleashing their hounds who bayed for Babbity's blood. But as she reached a low hedge, the little witch vanished from sight, and when the king, the charlatan, and all the courtiers gained the other side, they found the pack of witch-hunting hounds barking and scrabbling around a bent and aged tree. "She has turned herself into a tree," screamed the charlatan, and, dreading lest Babbity turn back into a woman and denounce him, "Cut her down, your majesty. That is the way to treat evil witches." An axe was brought at once, and the old tree was felled to loud cheers from the courtiers and the charlatan. However, as they were making ready to return to the palace, the sound of loud cackling stopped them in their tracks. "Fools!" cried Babbity's voice from the stump they had left behind. "No witch or wizard can be killed by being cut in half. Take the axe if you do not believe me, and cut the grand sorcerer in 2. The captain of the brigade of witch hunters was eager to make the experiment, but as he raised the axe, the charlatan fell to his knees, screaming for mercy and confessing all his wickedness. As he was dragged away to the dungeons, the tree stump cackled more loudly than ever. "By cutting a witch in half, you have unleashed a dreadful curse upon your kingdom," it told the petrified king. "Henceforth, every stroke of harm that you inflict upon my fellow witches and wizards will feel like an axe stroke in your own side, until you will wish you could die of it." At that, the king fell to his knees too, and told the stump that he would issue a proclamation at once, protecting all the witches and wizards of the kingdom, and allowing them to practice their magic in peace. "Very good," said the stump, "but you have not yet made amends to Babbity." "Anything at all, cried." "He is in," thought the foolish king, wringing his hands before the stump. "You will erect a statue of Babbity upon me in memory of your poor washerwoman, and to remind you forever of your own foolishness," said the stump. The king agreed to it at once, and promised to engage the foremost sculptor in the land and have the statue made of pure gold. Then the shamed king and all the noblemen and women returned to the palace, leaving the tree stump cackling behind them. When the grounds were deserted once more, there wriggled from a hole between the roots of the tree stump a stout and whiskery old rabbit with a wand clamped between her teeth. Babbity hopped out of the grounds and far away, and ever after a golden statue of the washerwoman stood upon the tree stump, and no witch or wizard was ever persecuted in the kingdom again. You're still awake? Let me find another story. This one's called The Fountain of Fair Fortune. Heard of it before? Thought so. Hopefully this one puts you to sleep. High on a hill in an enchanted garden, enclosed by tall walls and protected by strong magic, flowed the Fountain of Fair Fortune. Once a year, between the hours of sunrise and sunset on the longest day, a single unfortunate was given the chance to fight their way to the fountain, bathe in its waters, and receive fair fortune for evermore. On the appointed day, hundreds of people travelled from all over the kingdom to reach the garden walls before dawn. Male and female, rich and poor, young and old, of magical means and without, they gathered in the darkness, each hoping that they would be the one to gain entrance to the garden. 3 witches, each with her burden of woe, met on the outskirts of the crowd and told one another their sorrows as they waited for sunrise. The first, by name Asher, was sick of a malady no healer could cure. She hoped that the fountain would banish her symptoms and grant her a long and happy life. The second, by name Altheda, had been robbed of her home, her gold and her wand by an evil sorcerer. She hoped that the fountain might relieve her of powerlessness and poverty. The third, by name Amata, had been deserted by a man whom she loved dearly, and she thought her heart would never mend. She hoped that the fountain would relieve her of her grief and longing. Pitying each other, the 3 women agreed that, should the chance befall them, they would unite and try to reach the fountain together. The sky was rent with the first ray of sun, and a chink in the wall opened. The crowd surged forward, each of them shrieking their claim for the fountain's benison. Creepers from the garden beyond snaked through the pressing mass and twisted themselves around the first witch, Asher. She grasped the wrist of the second witch, Altheda, who seized tight upon the robes of the third witch, Amata. And Amata became caught upon the armor of a dismal-looking knight who was seated on a bone-thin horse. The creepers tugged the 3 witches through the chink in the wall, and the knight was dragged off his steed after them. The furious screams of the disappointed throng rose upon the morning air, then fell silent as the garden walls sealed once more. Asher and Altheda were angry with Amata, who had accidentally brought along the knight. "Only one can bathe in the fountain. It will be hard enough to decide which of us it will be, without adding another." Now Sir Luckless, as the knight was known in the land outside the walls, observed that these were witches, and having no magic, nor any great skill at jousting or dueling with swords, nor anything that distinguished the non-magical man, was sure that he had no hope of beating the 3 women to the fountain. He therefore declared his intention of withdrawing outside the walls again. At this, Amata became angry too. "Faint heart," she chided him. "Draw your sword, knight, and help us reach our goal." And so the 3 witches and the forlorn knight ventured forth into the enchanted garden, where rare herbs, fruit, and flowers grew in abundance on either side of the sunlit paths. They met no obstacle until they reached the foot of the hill on which the fountain stood. There, however, wrapped around the base of the hill, was a monstrous white worm, bloated and blind. At their approach, it turned a foul face upon them and uttered the following words: "Pay me the proof of your pain." Sir Luckless drew his sword and attempted to kill the beast, but his blade snapped. Then Altheda cast rocks at the worm, while Asher and Amata essayed every spell that might subdue or entrance it, but the power of their wands was no more effective than their friend stone, or the night steel. The worm would not let them pass. The sun rose higher and higher in the sky, and Asher, despairing, began to weep. Then the great worm placed its face upon hers and drank the tears from her cheeks. Its thirst assuaged. The worm slithered aside and vanished into a hole in the ground. Rejoicing at the worm's disappearance, the 3 witches and the knight began to climb the hill, sure that they would reach the fountain before noon. Halfway up the steep slope, however, they came across words cut into the ground before them. "Pay me the fruit of your labours." Sir Luckless took out his only coin and placed it upon the grassy hillside, but it rolled away and was lost. The 3 witches and the knight continued to climb, but though they walked for hours more, they advanced not a step. The summit came no nearer, and still the inscription lay in the earth before them. All were discouraged as the sun rose over their heads and began to sink towards the far horizon. But Altheda walked faster and harder than any of them, and exhorted the others to follow her example, though she moved no further up the enchanted hill. "Courage, friends, and do not yield!" she cried, wiping the sweat from her brow. As the drops fell glittering onto the earth, the inscription blocking their path vanished, and they found that they were able to move upwards once more. Delighted by the removal of this second obstacle, they hurried towards the summit as fast as they could, until at last they glimpsed the fountain, glittering like crystal in a bower of flowers and trees. Before they could reach it, however, they came to a stream that ran round the hilltop, barring their way. In the depths of the clear water lay a smooth stone bearing the words, "Pay me the treasure of your past." Sir Luckless attempted to float across the stream on his shield, but it sank. The three witches pulled him from the water, then tried to leap the brook themselves, but it would not let them cross, and all the while the sun was sinking lower in the sky. So they fell to pondering the meaning of the stone's message, and Amata was the first to understand. Taking her wand, she drew from her mind all the memories of happy times she had spent with her vanished lover, and dropped them into the rushing waters. The stream swept them away, and stepping stones appeared, and the three witches and the knight were able to pass at last on to the summit of the hill. The fountain shimmered before them, set amidst herbs and flowers rarer and more beautiful than any they had yet seen. The sky burned ruby, and it was time to decide which of them would bathe. Before they could make their decision, however, frail Asha fell to the ground. Exhausted by their struggle to the summit, she was close to death. Her three friends would have carried her to the fountain, but Asha was in mortal agony and begged them not to touch her. Then Altheda hastened to pick all those herbs she thought most hopeful, and mix them in Sir Luckless's gourd of water, and poured the potion into Asha's mouth. At once Asha was able to stand. What was more, all symptoms of her dread malady had vanished. "I am cured," she cried. "I have no need of the fountain. Let Altheda bathe." But Altheda was busy collecting more herbs in her apron. "If I can cure this disease, I shall earn gold aplenty. Let Amata bathe." Sir Luckless bowed and gestured Amata towards the fountain, but she shook her head. The stream had washed away all regret for her lover, and she saw now that he had been cruel and faithless, and that it was happiness enough to be rid of him. "Good sir, you must bathe, as a reward for all your chivalry," she told Sir Luckless. So the knight clanked forth in the last rays of the setting sun, and bathed in the fountain of fair fortune, astonished that he was the chosen one of hundreds, and giddy with his incredible luck. As the sun fell below the horizon, Sir Luckless emerged from the waters with the glory of his triumph upon him, and flung himself in his rusted armor at the feet of Amata, who was the kindest and most beautiful woman he had ever beheld. Flushed with success, he begged for her hand and her heart, and Amata, no less delighted, realized that she had found a man worthy of them. The three witches and the knight set off down the hill together, arm in arm, and all four led long and happy lives. And none of them ever knew or suspected that the fountain's waters carried no enchantment at all. "Finally, you're asleep. You seem so comfortable." "Make room for me. You're going to kick me off my own bed."